Good morning. I'm Dan Cook with Ortho World, and I'm happy to welcome you to this session and introduce our speakers. Today, we're going to be discussing the exciting potential of 3D printing with next generation materials, and we have a wonderful and engaging panel to present that information. Matt Schomber is the founder and principal engineer of Not-A-Robot Engineering, an engineering consulting firm. He also lends his technical services as a fractional CTO to companies like Illuminate and Uniform. Craig Rosenblum is the president of HiMed, where he and his team collaborate directly with dental and medical device manufacturers around the world to provide innovative biomaterial solutions. Dr. Brian Knabb is a research engineer at Crew Medical, specializing in material testing and additive manufacturing. And finally, Dr. Scott Taylor is the chief technology officer at PolyMed and specializes in material selection and medical device design. I'm going to throw it to Matt now, but please welcome the speakers.
I'm really excited about this. I think for you here, this should hopefully be the most informative discussion that you'll go to all show. I was just telling some of these guys, I've gotten more questions recently at the show and then over the last several months about, hey, Matt, like, what's the next generation of things that we should be considering? So CMOs, OEMs, there's a lot of talk about, hey, has titanium run its course, right? What's the next thing? Is it coatings? Should we be doing impregnating materials with stuff, or should we just be looking for new substrates, a new canvas to be able to play with? So I think the three people we brought to the panel this time each have their own specialties. You're going to see a broad swath of materials being presented to you. And this idea of, utilizing additive manufacturing to enable things like resorbable scaffolds or new things in ceramics or other alternative metals besides titanium should be pretty fascinating. So each of the panelists is going to give a quick presentation, and then we're going to do a nice fireside chat and just talk a little bit about some of the challenges and then open it up for audience questions as well. So I'm going to invite Craig to start us out.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for attending. So I'm going to begin the conversation today speaking about bioceramic additive manufacturing. So as I look into the audience, there's quite a few familiar faces. I see a lot of engineers, and as engineers, we like to ask the question, well, how does it work? But before we get into that, let's start the conversation really more focused on some big picture items. So this is some really compelling data that additive manufacturing research came out with the very end of last year. And they're projecting for significant growth. This is not just for bioceramic additive manufacturing. This is a projection for ceramic additive manufacturing. And the projection calls for, by the year 2032, for this to be approaching a $1 billion industry. And specifically for bioceramics and the opportunities that the orthopedic industry permits, it's going to be up to many of us in this audience that are going to allow for this industry to mature to its full potential, or perhaps not. So how do we get there is the question. So specifically, if we focus on bioceramics, we could divide bioceramics into three different classifications: bioinert, bioactive, and bioresorbable. So a bioinert ceramic would be along the lines of alumina or zirconia. This would be a ceramic that would have no significant response when implanted within the human body. Bioactive ceramics, such as hydroxyapatite, would provide a significant osteogenic response when hydroxyapatite is implanted. Hydroxyapatite is very stable by comparison to our third category, bioresorbable calcium phosphates. So hydroxyapatite is going to provide a strong response that's going to provide a significant result. And you see throughout the floor today a lot of implants, for example, that are hydroxyapatite coated. A bioresorbable implant is one that will resorb in the body over time. There's a quicker resorption rate. Oftentimes tricalcium phosphate is the material of choice here. This is a material that will absorb traditionally on the order of months by comparison to a significant longer time for hydroxyapatite coating. So specifically for today's conversation, I'm going to be focusing on a bioactive hydroxyapatite and a bioresorbable tricalcium phosphate. So now that we set the ground rules, we're going to begin in a more formal manner introducing HiMed. So HiMed is a global provider of high quality bioceramics and innovative surface treatments. So long before additive manufacturing was conceptualized, we've been in this industry for 3 decades, predominantly manufacturing bioceramics in a wide variety of forms, using these materials to perform surface treatments on medical devices, as well as supplying these bioceramics for orthobiological devices such as bone fillers and bone cements. And then third, and certainly most important for the purposes of a conversation like today, we have a research and development facility which allows for next generation materials and new applications with pre-existing materials to be materialized. So it was last year at OMTech, some of you might recall, that we officially announced the Bioceramics Center of Excellence at HiMed. And in some ways, you could argue that this was putting the cart ahead of the horse, because to say that we have a center of excellence means that we are excellent. And this is part of a movement where we believe that it's proper for a company like HiMed to establish the Bioceramics Center of Excellence, given so many years of experience in manufacturing and perfecting bioceramics and being able to identify the exact type of hydroxyapatite or tricalcium phosphate. But it was really intended and specifically unveiled at a conference like OMTech with folks like you in mind, recognizing that this is exciting technology, but it's not the type of technology that you listen to a talk like the talk that we're giving today, tomorrow making an investment, right? It takes time. There's a matter of understanding the engineering value that it provides. There's a matter of understanding the business value that it provides. So the Bioceramics Center of Excellence is a 3D printing research facility that was established really with the OEM in mind, with the idea of being able to prototype, analyze, and optimize, right? So many times when you see a new technology that's unveiled, how do you begin? How do we start? So the ability to prototype with a company like HiMed, right? Sending your CAD file of a conceptualized design that would be a proper candidate for 3D printing, analyze that device and analyze the key characteristics and ultimately being able to optimize them. And you might recall at the very end of last year, there was a feature article about the BCOE, a cover article in the December 2024 Bone Zone. So now for those engineers that patiently waited for how does the technology work, I have a short video that hopefully will work. There we go. So this is the Serifab S65 printer. This is specifically a printer that Lithos, a partner company of ours, has generated. So the BioInc that we use is a hydroxyapatite or tricalcium phosphate powder, which is mixed with a polymer to create a slurry that you see dispensed as so. And that slurry is dispensed within a vat. And that vat is transparent. So beneath that vat, once the slurry is spread through, you have a very complex optical system, which allows for blue light to shine through that optical system and cast a CAD file layer by layer. And that blue light clears each individual section of the device. So ultimately, one can create a full 3D print with the build plate dipping in and out of the vat. As far as speed, we're talking about 150 layers can be printed per hour, each layer as fine as 10 microns. So this is really quite impressive technology, and there's quite a few ceramic 3D printing companies that manufacture these types of equipment. HiMed was introduced to Lithos with the goal of being able to perfect the material, right? When you go to Lithos' website or read about the type of technology that they have, they'll rattle off data like the speed of the printer, the resolution, so on and so forth. But as a materials guy, I'm biased. I focus on the material. So to be true to our conversation, and I think my panel agrees that the materials are what matters. So consistent with that thought, what makes a good candidate 3D printed slurry or ink, right? So the material needs to flow well, right? So the powder itself, which is embedded and creates that slurry that you saw before, needs to have a proper particle shape, the distribution, the morphology, and surface area is really critical as well. So HiMed, we're right now, step one of this Bioceramics Center of Excellence, incorporating our materials that are tried and true, that have found their successes in patient outcomes for decades, being able to incorporate these materials, optimizing the materials for the ideal slurry. solids loading. So secondly, that viscous slurry that you just saw, the viscosity needs to be effective enough so that you can have the proper densification. So the final device that you saw printed in the previous slide, that would be the green body. So there's additional steps that I'll be describing there afterwards, but that densification is really important. When you think about ceramics, and maybe I should have said this at the beginning, I have years of experience experimenting and researching dental enamel. And the concern, of course, about ceramics are very strong, they're heat resistant. The concern, of course, though, is that they're brittle. And if you think about dental enamel is the strongest ceramic in the body. It's even stronger than bone. If it was not for the underlying dentin, the soft cushion that dentin provides, our teeth would not be nearly as resilient as they truly are. So, you know, when we talk about ceramics, all of you, I see your wheels turning. You're thinking about different opportunities to perhaps adapt this technology and bring it back to your own companies. It's important to recognize the ideal application. Print resolution, I had indicated before, the lithos technology is quite remarkable. And 3D printing, while it's the buzzword, of course, being able to recognize the exact device and the intricacy that 3D printing provides, especially for porous forms, patient-specific devices at that, is really what this type of technology, in my mind, is most suited for. And lastly, the ability to be compatible with a binder. The binder system is very important, both for the ability for the blue light to penetrate through, as well as for that polymer to be heated off, if you will, burnt off as part of a post-processing sintering step. So we mentioned before particle size and morphology and distribution. So just to briefly touch base on this, as HiMed develops new calcium phosphate specific for these applications, we're very cognizant of the types of materials and the types of morphologies. And I had mentioned cleaning and debinding and sintering operations that take place after that green body is printed. Ceramics shrink after they're fired or after they're sintered. So it's important to be cognizant of what the end device geometry should be and factoring in that shrinkage over time so that you're printing a device which is a little bit larger than intended, recognizing that the densification will take place, allowing for the ceramic to realize its true hardness potential. So there are many orthopedic applications for these types of ceramics. I showcased quite a few on the slide just to inspire ideas that you all probably have from listening for the conversation that we've had so far. Patient-specific implants, as I had mentioned before, are especially exciting, and being able to have the exact geometry and the very specific porosity that these types of devices are needing. Also very fine, smaller components that conventional means of manufacturing just is not proper to provide. But again, it comes back to the materials, the quality of the material, the importance of these materials that are tried and true but are found new applications. So with that, I thank you for listening to my portion of the conversation, and I hand it off to my next presenter.
I think Scott.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. It'll be a surprise.
I think it's Scott, but we'll see what's up.
Oh.
I was wrong.
Maybe not.
We sat in the right order, unintentionally.
Thank you, Craig. My name is Brian. I'm an additive manufacturing engineer at Crew Medical, and today I'll talk a bit about an exciting new interesting material known as tantalum and how we believe it has potential as an implant material, specifically when produced using 3D printing. As I mentioned, my name is Brian. I'm an additive manufacturing engineer at Crew Medical. My background is very much in materials research. I did a PhD in metal fatigue, mainly focused on electron beam melting of titanium. I have 6 years of experience in additive manufacturing. Crew Medical, we're a trusted leader in advanced manufacturing. We're a contract manufacturer based in the south of Ireland, County Limerick. We're producing 200,000 implants per year for our customers, serving medical OEMs for 40 years. We continuously invest in cutting-edge technology such as additive manufacturing We also have a very large footprint in subtractive manufacturing, machining, and also post-processing, such as polishing. I just want to give a broad overview, first of all, of some of the metals which are used in orthopedics today, and outline some of their advantages and disadvantages. Starting off with stainless steel, it's of course cost effective, it has good strength, it's widely available and very easy to machine. Some of the disadvantages are a potential risk of nickel allergies, lower corrosion resistance and high stiffness, which could potentially lead to bone shielding. Cobalt chrome, of course, has excellent wear resistance, it's really high strength and has good corrosion properties. It also has high stiffness, of course, and there's also some risk of ions leaching into the bloodstream, which could cause some localized toxicity effects. It is also relatively expensive. Titanium is a really high strength material. It's got good fatigue properties, making good for load bearing applications, also very biocompatible, but it is also quite costly, difficult to machine. And there is also that potential, specifically in grade 23 or grade 5, where you have aluminium or vanadium ion leaching, which could cause a localized toxicity effect. So tantalum, which is the primary focal point of my talk today, it does have outstanding biocompatibility, which leads to excellent osseointegration, specifically when it's used as a bone interface material. It is relatively high cost, and there's limited availability, and also it's very difficult to machine. I just want to hone in a bit more on some of the unique properties of tantalum, which we feel makes it suitable for an implant material. Again, excellent biointegration. It's actually been shown to be superior to titanium and cobalt chrome in terms of a bone ingrowth material, primarily due to the oxide layer it forms, but also the fact that we can print it in a pure form, which means there's no alloying additions which can leach out. When printed, it does exhibit extremely high ductility. The reason why that's important is it makes the failure mode quite predictable. So it's a non-brittle failure mode, non-catastrophic failure. So we can design our implants around that much easier. Additionally, it can form a really strong bond with titanium. So we can utilize the power of additive manufacturing to combine the bulk properties of titanium with the surface properties of tantalum. And we see that when we print a tantalum sample onto titanium, the sample, if put under tension, will actually fail at the tantalum portion rather than at the bond. So we can achieve a really high strength bond. And this makes it a really versatile material. Potentially, we could use it as a kind of hybrid material for implants, using the bone interface portion, well, tantalum being the bone interface portion, and titanium or cobalt chrome being the bulk load carrying material, such as what's done with Zimmer Biomet's trabecular metal. So as I mentioned, there are some challenges around the manufacturability of tantalum, lack of scalability and cost, specifically when we talk about subtractive manufacturing. And we think to unlock the unique potential of tantalum, additive manufacturing is the ideal technology for that. We can create really lightweight, cost-effective lattice structures, which can be used as the bone interface portion of an implant, and also print directly onto titanium or cobalt chrome to utilize the bulk properties of that material. So what we've done is we've partnered up with our friends at Global Advanced Metals. They're a supplier of high quality, ethically sourced tantalum powder to bring to market a platform which we call Talos. And Talos is essentially a printing platform which our customers can leverage to help bring some new innovative implants to market. And the way that we support our customers is by having a dedicated GE Concept Laser M2 printer, which is locked just to tantalum. We have this stable supply of tantalum powder. We can produce prototypes and also support serial production. We've optimized the process parameters for bulk, lattice, and tantalum titanium interface printing. We can achieve really high densities And any customers that are interested, we can also support with design, prototyping, and materials testing. So I just want to give a quick snapshot of some of the research activities which we've carried out on this particular project. Powder stability, of course, is a concern in additive manufacturing. We've done some studies around that, as well as optimizing lattice design using our partners at Topology. Just to give a brief overview of the powder study, primary purpose of this is to generate some data which our customers can leverage when it comes to validating their processes. So we've done a 15-print study which contained various test samples for mechanical testing, compression testing, density testing, and then also some demo implants which we can measure the dimensional accuracy of. So we ran 15 prints and we measured the, as I said, mechanical properties, but also the chemical properties of the powder, just to show that we have chemically stable powder and mechanical properties. We also measured or analyzed the morphology of the powder. As I mentioned, one of the key benefits of additive manufacturing is to create lightweight lattices, which can be used as bone interface materials. And we've worked together with Topology to come up with software workflows where we can basically test these structures in software before going ahead and printing them, and then testing them using our in-house material testing lab. And we'd be happy to support any customers on that also. And then my question to you, are you ready to innovate? If so, please join us and leverage Talos in your next innovation project. And if you're interested in Talos, please feel free to reach out to us. We have a booth in that direction over there. Forgot the number, sorry. But also you can find any info on our website about Talos. Thank you very much for listening.
Cool. All right. Well, let's round it out. We've talked about ceramics. We've talked about metals. And so now we get to talk a little bit about polymers. So my name is Scott Taylor. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at PolyMed. So we focus on polymers, but not just polymers, absorbable polymers, and specifically absorbable polymers and their use in medical devices. So you can read PolyMed's mission. There's no need to belabor that point. But we are a full-service CDMO. So all the way from synthesis of unique polymer formulations to processing, mostly through things like extrusion or injection molding and textile operations. So very traditional manufacturing techniques to make medical devices. But we also have some advanced manufacturing techniques available as well. Electrospinning is something we've been doing. So that was actually the focus of my PhD. But we actually had the first marketed electrospun device that was cleared by FDA, and that was more than a decade ago. About 2015, we looked at the opportunities around 3D printing and identified that as a high potential area for part customization. And really starting with thermoplastic materials, but then translation into UV curable as well. But the whole purpose of all of this for us is, we have unique materials, that have some very interesting properties, both in terms of mechanics and degradation timeline. And we want to be able to convert those into high-value products, for patient care. So that is really what we have built as a company, is the ability to create polymers, the ability to process those, and then complete those as finished sterile medical devices. Or anywhere in between that, we sell polymer and we sell fibers and textiles as well. But you can see some examples of things that we've done in the past. Yeah, so we are in South Carolina. And so, just a couple hours south of here. And you can see some of the details about our company. We are FDA registered. We have quality system, of course. I think the most interesting thing here is the amount of emphasis we place on innovative research. So we have a lot of advanced degrees on staff. We have a lot of university collaboration, mostly with Clemson just because of our proximity there, but really with universities around the world and interesting companies around the world. This is translated to more than 11 million implantations of technology based on things that we have developed and manufactured at PolyMed. Yeah, really excited, always excited to hear new ideas, new concepts, and hopefully that is something that we can help companies turn to a reality. So with 3D printing, like I said, the opportunity was there, a decade ago. There was some democratization of 3D printing technology, with the FDM printers. And we already have thermoplastics, right? So if we're able to create filaments based on extrusion, we can make tubing or films based on extrusion technologies. We can apply that same thing to additive manufacturing with fused deposition modeling, right? And so basically, we took our existing catalog of materials and customized those specifically for use in additive manufacturing. And so that's a wide variety of mechanics and degradation timelines, as well as things that were value add, compounding with TCP, right? Let's put some bioactive ceramics in there, some absorbable ceramics, some bioactive glasses, right? So we can then alter the performance of these materials to create really interesting and unique characteristics. So the bottom is some of the work that we've done to create high tolerance 3D printed parts that contain bioactive glass and beta TCP. And with this formulation specifically, this is a fully porous custom fit based on CT data implant. And the image on the right is some animal work that we've done. You can see the bony integration, really high contact integration of bone throughout the lattice structure of those implants. And that is in a rabbit tibial model, but we have other studies that are beneficial as well. Okay, so the thermoplastics are based on technology that's been around essentially since the 70s with the introduction of absorbable sutures. But to then capture the additional benefits of higher resolution 3D printing, there was a need to create a platform that supports light curable polymers that are also biocompatible, not just initially, but throughout the degradation timeline as byproducts are being generated during degradation, and that have a range of mechanics that you can print to high accuracy through a variety of techniques. We've done a lot of work with Formlabs, but this is really a process agnostic or an equipment agnostic material. These can be printed in on a number of different printers. And here's some of the work that we've done there with some foam structures, of course, the Veroni patterns, traditional cellular scaffolds, and depending on the mechanics that are needed for the part, one or other infill type patterns may be more or less important. Some of this work, we're building things like cell type, like cell wells for differentiation, for specific differentiation of cells into different types of cartilage, for example. And then as those mature, the materials degrade, and you're left with really just the cellular product in the end. So we see great potential in these degradable systems, basically to have this initial performance characteristic that then goes away over time, leaving you with hopefully high quality healing, and then no risk of late stage foreign material challenges associated with more traditional plastics. Yeah, I think that is it for me. So thank you guys for just having us here. We also have a booth, so we're basically catty cornered to this office. Love to talk to you as you stop by and see us.
All right. Thanks, Scott. So now, if you guys have a question, just put your hand up, and then whoever's got the mic can just run to you. Anytime there's a discussion, feel free to put your hand up. I'm not I'll try to keep out and look if I see somebody with their hand up, but feel free to just throw out questions. So these guys were kind enough to give me seed questions that were like, some of them are softballs. I actually have harder questions for each of them.
Fantastic.
But I will lob it up first to everybody can answer this question. Everyone probably is like, hey, I've got an idea for an application, one or all maybe of what was just presented. But, you know, chief of mind in my development pathway is always, what are my regulatory hurdles? I can develop it, it's going to be strong enough, you know, I think I can get a product out, but then I got to meet up with Big Daddy FDA. What, you know, and feel free to answer in any order you want, but what are some of the key regulatory challenges you foresee with new materials, resorbable materials, ceramics, or new metals? I'd just love to hear from each of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So much of our history has really been built around developing new materials. That has mostly been associated with the traditional manufacturing processes, so extrusion and molding and the like. But for 3D printing especially, I mean, there are some really unique requirements, I think, as we all know, with 3D printing. But FDA has laid some groundwork, for how we manage that. So, with our materials specifically, even though they are not the exact same polymers like a Vicryl or a polydioxanone, they are copolymers that are based on those same building blocks, right? So the same building blocks that we make those polymers from, we make our polymers from. And we understand that that these things are going to degrade and ultimately turn into the same byproducts as those other products. So a lot of that work has been done already in terms of how we handle new materials through regulatory paths. The specific question about 3D printing for us is a lot about control of process. With melt extrusion or textile processes, we can build those and understand where foreign matter may be a challenge, right? It's mostly on the surface of those products, but in 3D printing, as you're building layer by layer, there's always the consideration of entrained materials, right? Or, with our materials specifically, 3D printing does change the degradation profile. So we can't just say, oh, we understand like a molded article or an oriented fiber degrades in this way, so of course it's going to degrade in the same timeline with a 3D printed article. So we haven't really seen that much pushback when we basically apply the same framework that we've used with other novel materials with FDA. It's just about answering the same type of questions, maybe a bit more rigorously.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Specifically when it comes to tantalum, it's a little bit tricky to convince OEMs and potentially regulatory bodies to accept it, especially when it's 3D printed, because titanium and cobalt chrome, there's already so much history in the medical space with those materials. First with traditional manufacturing, and then when 3D printing came around, they were able to kind of leverage some of that predicate data from the traditional manufacturing side. So those materials have been used very commonly in additive manufacturing over the past 10, 20 years. So it's a little bit tricky now to convince OEMs and regulatory bodies to now say, okay, we want to switch to a new material. I would say one of the things which is most challenging from a technical perspective would be the cleaning of lattice structures for powder bed process. Also the fatigue behavior. Tantalum has quite different fatigue properties compared to titanium. Yeah, that would be my big one.
The coexistence of marketing and regulatory, right? New materials, that's the buzzword, but in actuality, I think it's new application for many of the same materials, right? I think, at least in HiMed's case, in the bioceramics that I had spoken about, many of these materials, as I alluded to at the start of my talk, we're currently using and have been using with FDA master files in place since the early days. I think controlling of a process, like you said, is really important. Having a polymeric binder in our slurry and being able to burn that off and show proof that it is no longer there, or if it is in contact, being able to provide proper documentation, I think is important. But again, I would urge the FDA that these are materials that are tried and true. It's just a new application which allows for a very unique and intricate style of 3D printing.
Yeah, so I'll stick with you, Craig, because I'm personally fascinated by 3D printed ceramics. You mentioned before, people hear ceramics and they think brittle, and there's obviously ways to mitigate that. So, in my mind, I'm thinking layer by layer approach, combined with brittle material. I just feel like cracks right across the print lines. So, what's currently being done, and maybe the center of excellence to research that? And are there any ways you can mitigate? Maybe even just tell the crowd out here that are thinking, I don't want to put something brittle in a body. Maybe, like you said, history of previous materials they've already done.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the analogy, as we all had our pancake breakfast this morning, is successive pancakes not being properly stacked and adhering well, but each individual pancake being firm and ready to go. That's where the sintering process is really important.
Yeah.
We were talking yesterday also, Matt, about multi-material 3D printing.
Right.
And that's something that really excites me. HiMed has offered a biphasic calcium phosphate for many years, biphasic being a combination of hydroxyapatite and tricalcium phosphate in a homogeneous form, say 20% HA, 80% TCP. I'm especially excited about the ability to have a multi-material printer, being able to print two materials simultaneously, where you can have a device where maybe one end is HA rich and another end is tricalcium phosphate rich. I think that's the killer app. And then again, I think the applications and being able to have that proper stability and hardness materialize, it's really based on the sintering process. It's a pretty effective process. The size of the furnace is really important as well, making sure that there's no significant temperature gradient within. And then, of course, whatever mechanical testing is required by the FDA to show efficacy.
Right. So, a great answer. So anybody that knows me or knows my name knows that I dabble in design a little bit. And I'm fascinated by the resorbable side of the bioceramics and polymers. So Scott, in particular, you mentioned that 3D printing changes some of the resorption rates a little bit. So you got to kind of test this stuff out again. But how do you talk to potential customers when they say, hey, I've got this application, I need to resorb in this amount of time, but I also need to be structural? Like, what are the factors that go into designing a really killer, like, resorbable idea? Because I think there's probably a lot of people out here that don't know about, like, what you guys do. And,
Right.
People keep telling me, like, oh, the ability for the implant to just go away and be bone to be there, that's like a decade away. And I'm like, no, it's actually like it's here now. So what would you say to those people that are wary of the development pathway of such a product?
Yeah, you just summarized our first conversation with everyone we've ever talked to.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a question, really no matter what level someone is going to come to us, they're typically not going to be experienced with the absorbable materials. Right. They've worked with metals, they've worked with, ceramics or permanent plastics. And they certainly have a great idea about a material that's going to transition and then go away over time. For us, it's always about, we can talk about mechanics of a material, or we can talk about the dream of what it's going to do. But it's narrowing in on actually what is the purpose of what are you trying to do to make it absorbable? Like, why? It's different for everybody, right? Sometimes it truly is just a mechanical strength, right? They need it to be, a suture. I mean, the primary role of a suture is it's going to maintain strength for maybe a couple of weeks as that collagen forms and the strength returns to the tissue. But if you're building a tissue engineered structure, it may not necessarily be about strength, right? Maybe you're going to splint the application, maybe you're going to do something else. And so then the primary role of that temporary structure is about creating a great environment for tissue growth, right? More than strength. So everybody's why is different, and it's about getting to that why. And then everything falls in. The materials fall in after that, the design cues, whether it's a porous structure, the organization of those pores, right? So we don't You said something great yesterday. We don't like to just see the same 3 lattice structures,
Right.
right? And because it's not a one size fits all.
Yep.
Lattice structure has to follow the intended use and the intended function. So we don't kind of hold ourselves to any like rigid idea of what a device should be until we understand the actual why of why we need something bioabsorbent.
Awesome. Thanks. I think we had a question out here. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just a follow-up question for Scott. You commented in the development of some of your resorbable polymeric devices for implantation that the FDA has laid some groundwork as far as guidelines. There is a guidance document on additive manufacturing, but it's very metals specific. So I'm wondering if that was ever recommended that you follow in any of your interactions with FDA, or if you have any comments about that guidance document in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that guidance document, I'm sure, we can all have some thoughts on that. I think that the guidance document is interesting. I do a lot of work with ASTM as well in the additive manufacturing group. So for us, it was really, we looked at that in terms of just a better resolution of the expectations around process controls. A lot of the things that guidance document did, additional testing of materials, consideration of variation on the print bed, things of that nature. Cleaning validations are super important for this, but we've always, because everything we do is implantable, we've always taken a lot of care with cleaning validations. So the guidance document is still, that guidance document key to how we approach additively manufactured parts. It is one piece of the puzzle. Because there's other layers of guidance around, hopefully there's a guidance document around whatever implant we're building, right? And so it's an additive document to that. But yeah, we certainly, even though it's metals driven, we have certainly taken that into close considerations for anything we do. Yep.
All right, thank you. Great question. Actually, so Brian, I was super excited when I saw the bond that you can create between tantalum and titanium. Mm-hmm. And I actually get people that ask this a lot, like, hey, I've got a part and I want to put something on top of it. Can I just put this in a machine and then start melting stuff on top of it? So that fascinated me because titanium is well known, it's great, but if tantalum has been shown in research to have better biocompatibility and osteogenesis properties, what are your thoughts on have you guys experimented with taking just a regular part or a cage and then just melting tantalum like a lattice structure on top? I think that could be really cool as far as application goes, but there's obviously probably process challenges to doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Because we're working with laser powder bed fusion, it's a layer by layer process. So we can really only print onto flat surfaces with that particular technology. There are other 3D printing technologies where potentially you could have kind of an FDM process with a multi-axis system where you can print onto curved surfaces. But that's something we may be able to investigate further down the line. But for now, we're looking at the powder bed fusion process. And the way we can still make use of this dual material idea is to print onto titanium, onto a flat surface of titanium, and then machine that part, machine that titanium part basically. So we can get a lattice on top and whatever geometry we want, basically we can achieve with subtractive machining below. The way that we've done this in our kind of research printer, we have a build plate which is made of titanium, and in that we have little inserts, titanium inserts that we can kind of insert into the build plate. We can print onto those and then we can remove them very quickly. So we can kind of, without having to cut that build plate, which can be very costly, we can basically quickly print onto those pucks and machine them in different ways, do some experimental tests on them. That's basically the way we've been approaching this problem.
Cool, we got about 5 minutes left. Was there anybody else had any questions while there's still time? I got plenty of seed questions still. Is there a hand?
Thank you. The question's for Brian. Could you comment on the post-processing differences that you'd experience with titanium and tantalum?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to post-processing, I'll start with machining, I guess. So tantalum is a little bit more difficult to machine than titanium due to its ductility or softness, basically. So it does create more chips, so you need more coolant. You need slower machining process, slower feed rates. When we're looking at heat treatments, you need higher temperatures to heat treat the material. Because it's not a dual phase material like titanium, you don't have to do any sort of solutionizing heat treatment as such, but it is preferred to do some stress relieving heat treatment after printing to maintain the dimensional tolerances of your part. We think roughly 1,000 to 1,200 degrees is suitable for stress relieving heat treatment. When it comes to polishing, it does polish out quite well, quite similar to titanium. And we have some experience with that with our manual and our robotic setups as well. Yeah. Any other specific post processes you're interested in?
So the heat treatment, especially when you're combining the two materials.
Yeah. Yeah, so when it comes to combining the materials, we've done some analysis on that interfacial layer. We found it has relatively low porosity, so similarly to the actual bulk material. So we don't actually think that it requires any hot isostatic pressing to remove porosity because the porosity that we found is so low. Hope that answers your questions.
All right, so in absence of any other hands, we got a few more minutes. I'm mostly curious, and I think this would be helpful for the audience, for maybe each of you to address this for a minute, but I think a few of you toss out the idea about particulate, and maybe that's not as much for polymer, although, again, if you're sintering polymers, same thing. The FDA is very, very concerned about the shedding of particles. How do you finish the surfaces? How do you clean the parts? I mean, Brian, you mentioned cleaning. The FDA is, in my experience in the last 3 years, they've actually ramped up their insistence on additional testing or analysis of these. If they consider it a coating, they're really worried about dissociation or what's going to happen to it. So can you give any insight, maybe just, again, a few real quick of like how your company in particular or your process deals with these sorts of queries? Because everyone's going to be concerned about that,
Yeah, for us, there's not more particulate shedding than in any other laser powder bed fusion material process. So it's the same as with titanium, and we would tackle it in the exact same way. So looking at blasting the surface, powder blasting, to remove any kind of loose particles that are still adhered to the surface. But we've also looked into things like electropolishing, which can be quite effective in removing those satellite particles. And then, of course, it's also about kind of the stability of your process, and that's where we go back to the powder study, which we did. It's known that as you print more with a certain batch of powder, you will produce more powder satellites. And we found that there's not much difference in terms of our other machines, which are running titanium versus our tantalum process. So we think we can kind of leverage that experience and that data in proving to the FDA that, look, this is not much different than printing with titanium in that respect.
Yeah. What about you, Craig, especially with like the slurry and the way that works with the binding?
Yeah, I think a robust cleaning validation would be needed, especially for a porous form. So prior to the sintering that I had described, after the green body, there's an airbrush step that removes any loose ends or components that haven't been fully cured as part of the blue light process. We have a lot of experience, of course, dealing with particulate when we're performing traditional blasting and coating. We have a few FDA reviewers that we're in conversation with right now about the matter. So it's definitely a red flag. But, I would say just performing a robust bioburden cytotoxicity testing, SEM with EDAX also is a really valuable tool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, thanks. And then Scott, just
Yeah.
last thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Craig deals with this as well. So one of the unique things about an absorbable product is over time, 100% of our material will shed.
Right.
Right. So anything that is in there is going to become exposed to the body at some point. Of course, I mean, there's two phases. There's the initial cleanliness of the material. And this is basically, even if it's a porous part, it's pretty similar to what we have to deal with now, right? We have to clean the materials. We have to prove that they're clean. Yeah. We do that a lot with, kind of solvent washes or whatever to make sure the surface is, free of dust, free of particulate. But the contents of the material that will eventually become exposed during degradation, and this is particular to 3D printing, also electrospinning. Yep. But things can become entrained inside the material. So the filtration, the purity of the materials that we use are paramount to making sure that the product is safe.
Yeah, and I think sample size and lot to lot variation is really critical. Right. Whatever you define, it needs to be clearly stated so that there's no uncertainty for the FDA reviewer.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, we are over time, and I wanted to thank each of the panelists for coming. I think this was hopefully illuminating for all you guys in attendance. I'm sure you guys will stick around.
Yep.
And so you guys can ask any questions after. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you guys all for attending.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys.